everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Steph Stricklen, your GeekWire Studios host for this Dell Technologies webinar focusing on of cloud and the amazing innovations that are going on in the space. Panel today for you. We've got some questions already coming in that we'll be sure to pass along and a lot of ground to cover. I do want to let you know that one of the things that we are doing with this is recording this, and we are doing it so we can then share it in a future email with you so you can have a chance to watch and share it amongst your friends and your colleagues if so appropriate. Let's go ahead and start things off right now by introducing you to our panel. I would like to first introduce you to Shelly Kramer. Shelly, let people know about Futurum Research and what you do in the space.
Well, hi everyone. I'm one of the founding partners of Futurum Research. We are a technology-focused research and analyst firm. I personally focus on a variety of topics, including cloud, security, the IoT, automation, and really all things related to the future of work. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, we appreciate you giving us your time. Thank you. Jeremy Ford, please introduce yourself. Let us folks what you do at Dell Technologies.
Yeah, I'm Jeremy Ford. I lead all of our giving and social innovation globally for Dell, which doesn't sound much like a cloud topic, but prior to this role, actually led one of our cloud services businesses. And so I have a kind of unique perspective of, not only kind of cloud background, but how cloud can kind of help from a career point of view, as well as kind of drive social impact globally.
Perfect. Deepak Patil, please introduce yourself to the group. You are on mute, sir.
Yes, thank you, Steph. And hello, everybody. My name is Deepak Patil. I am the head of cloud business at Dell Technologies. I've been part of Dell and the Dell family for about 2 years now, leading various cloud initiatives. Prior to that, I spent about 3 years at Oracle, responsible for helping with the Oracle cloud business. Before that, I spent 15 years at Microsoft. So I've been very fortunate to have been building cloud platforms, driving cloud businesses for the last 12, 15 years, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
I want to talk first about cloud and how it's really driving innovation in the tech space across the board. Beginning with the incredible innovations that we're seeing, Shelly, I want to actually come to you first. I know that this is a topic that you look at from sort of a meta-analysis standpoint. What do you think is really driving the advancements that we're going to see here in the near future?
We're going to do this all day. Mute, unmute, mute, unmute. Pre-COVID-19, cloud was playing a major role in business transformation and forward progress. Now that we're in the midst of COVID-19, that's happening really at the speed of light. And I think that, what we're seeing is that businesses are transforming into hyper-connected, hyper-scaled organizations. I've talked with so many senior executives at, every big tech company, and the overlying feeling is that, digital transformation, it's been on everybody's agenda. But what's happening now is just sort of 2 years worth of transformation packed into a couple of months. And we've done a bunch of research on this. We've got a couple of studies underway that haven't yet published. But one of the things that has come out of a survey that we've recently done is the top 3 most critical priorities for the coming 12 months: cloud-based solutions, mobility, which includes work from home, and cybersecurity, in that order. So cloud has always been important. Cloud is really driving everything that businesses are doing today.
And again, everyone, if you are just joining us, just to let you know, we are recording this webinar and we will provide it to you in a future email. Deepak, given your long run in this industry, you've already outlined sort of your career. What have you seen over the span of your career in this particular space?
Yeah, it's a good conversation to get started this dialogue on, Steph. My general belief is that innovation happens when invention meets adoption. So there are 2 aspects of innovation. There has to be invention, new things being created, and then there has to be an easier, more conducive way to adopt that invention. And I think cloud is an archetypical rocket fuel that has led to more invention meeting more adoption. And when I think about the cloud fuel innovation, I kind of think about three specific areas. Number one is cloud has democratized access to technology. I mean, it's phenomenal how every organization, from a small startup or a couple of guys in a garage to a large several 100,000 people organization, now has easy access to technology to achieve their business goals and objectives. The second thing cloud has done is cloud has democratized access to markets. You can really, as Shelly said, you can truly conduct business and innovation at the speed of light or speed of thought because of the access to because of the access to markets. And the third thing cloud has innovated is cloud has actually accelerated and increased the speed of innovation across organizations, partly because of just different technologies and applications and higher level intelligent services being available to people at their fingertips. So it's just awesome time to be doing what we're doing, and it's just awesome time to be driving this massive generational force in the industry.
When you were talking about the democratization of information and access to technology, Jeremy, you come to mind in the sense that that can also be an incredible way to drive forward social change. And I know we're going to talk more about that in depth, but how exciting has it been for you to sort of pivot your career into this role and watch the very things that Deepak is talking about begin to influence the world, help it make, be a better place?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting, as Deepak has pointed out, which is, many of the aspects, the qualities of cloud apply into the social space as well. Many nonprofits, as they're trying to achieve their respective missions, whether it's in health, education, economic opportunity, financial inclusion, what have you, need access to drive their respective missions, and need access to technology, and that ability for cloud to provide that very high-end capability into smaller organizations and then be able to scale that impact globally. We've seen that impact across multiple areas that historically technology wouldn't have had a role in if it wasn't for cloud. And so if you look at many of the, for example, the sustainable development goals that span different cause areas globally, what we've seen is that for about 65% of those, applying technology into those areas can have a positive effect on achieving those specific, very complex social goals that we've established that are even now more important than ever as we look at COVID and racial injustice, of trying to how do we address those kind of root socioeconomic disparities, and cloud is a big enabler of that. So it's been very impactful to see the foundations of cloud being applied into what let's call it the social vertical market.
Shelly, I wanted to ask you, as we look at cloud and we talk about the way that technology is often influenced in the startup community, what I find interesting in this particular world is that the big players in the space really have a chance to function a bit like startups in partnership with. Shelly, what do you see in the space as really thriving over the next few years?
There we go. Sorry. I love startups. And so I'll preface my remarks here with that. And I think that they're great. But I think that sometimes people make the mistake of thinking that startups are where we see the most innovation. And I'm here to say, as somebody who works with all the major players in big tech, that is absolutely not the case. And so, what I see, to kind of touch on your point, Jeremy, is that, what I see from friends in the technology space, really smart people who want to love what they're doing, they want to align themselves in their careers with companies whose values mirror their own. They want to align themselves with companies where they're doing good, where they're able to make an impact. And I think that, to me, sometimes when I hear, the startup grind or maybe some of the bro culture that exists, and I think, to me, especially as a woman in technology, that's very unattractive. What I'm looking for is, how can I align myself with a company that's really innovating? How can I go to work every day, by the way, even if I happen to be working from, my home office, and feel like I'm doing amazing things that have the ability to change the world, that have the ability to change the way people think and work and grow businesses. And to me, that's sexy and exciting. And so I think you look at, what I look at is if I'm evaluating a company that I might want to work with, and not, I'm not in the job market, but I have lots of conversations on the topic of the future of work and what people are looking for. And I think that, people are looking for opportunity. What is this company doing? What is this company doing to change the world? What kind of initiatives are they doing? And, some of the, I know Dell has done some amazing things early on in the days of COVID. Dell launched a $9 billion relief initiative to support its customers. So to me, that says a lot about, we don't just want to sell you something. We want to help you keep your business alive at a time like this. And I just noticed today, Microsoft rolled out a digital skills training initiative for 25 million people worldwide. And another cool thing that was a recent announcement in recent months, that's a little redundant, but Dell's on-demand program for flexible infrastructure consumption is huge, because all of a sudden it's taken, we used to sell customers things this way because we thought that was what we needed, but now what we're going to do is we're going to adjust this, and we're going to tailor our offerings to meet the needs of customers who need things like hyper-converged, hybrid cloud, storage, data protection. Like, that's really cool. And so to me, when I look at, another one I don't want to leave off just because it's in the news this week, is that Amazon just committed another $2 billion to climate change initiatives. So when people are looking for, where they want to align their passion, their talents, their brains, all of those things, I think that that's what they're looking for. What are you doing to change the world, and how can I be a part of that? And I think that's really important.
As I'm hearing you talk, I'm thinking a couple of programs come to mind. Dell has the returnship program for people who have left the workforce to either to raise children or for other reasons who want to come back in, as well as the autism hiring program, which is absolutely fantastic in every way, shape, or form. Deepak, I want to talk to you about changing the cloud conversation, and it kind of touches on what Shelly is saying, because something that is key to you is the idea of this generational work. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely, and everything Shelly said about where the innovation happening and all the work that Dell as well, but all of these companies are doing is being critical to people choosing where they work for. Is spot on. I think I completely agree with Shelly on everything she said. When I've been around for a while, and I've changed a few different companies, and I've changed a few different groups in the companies that I worked in. The interesting thing is the criteria I use, the set of criteria I use for deciding where to work hasn't changed. And there are from a personal point of view, there are 4 things that I always look for in the role that I'm seeking for myself, and make sure that the people I'm leading, they get clarity around those 4 things. Number 1 is people want to work for good people. People want to work for people that they enjoy spending time with, they learn from, and they feel like they are making great things happen. We usually spend more awake time with our colleagues than with our families at home. And you don't want to spend all of that time with people you don't enjoy spending time with, or you don't like, or you're not learning from. So that's a key criteria for me, and that's a key criteria for a lot of people. People want to work for initiatives that are fundamental to the mission and vision of the organization, which is kind of where the generational transformation or the generational change that you're talking about, Steph, kind of comes into picture, right? A lot of people don't want to work for something that is unimportant, or that is not a key part of who that company is or what that company is focused on. I, for example, chose to lead the Dell Cloud business because this is one of the top priorities for the company, starting with Michael Dell. And having an opportunity to work for something that is so fundamental to who we are and what we do in future is important to me. And it's a generational effort in the company, and it's getting the investment, the attention, and then of course the scrutiny that is it deserves, because it is so important. The third criterion that I apply, and I've seen people apply, is they want to find the right combination of applying the skills that they have acquired and learn new skills that they want to learn, and how the right combination. And I feel like we, especially everybody working in cloud, is usually in that mode. And then the fourth criterion is, when you do great work, you want to work for an organization that rewards and appreciates the contributions, and then you grow both from your role and your responsibilities, your financial capabilities, and so on and so forth. So the cloud collectively presents everybody who's in the middle of this massive generational transformation to make decisions around all of these criteria that I have come to see over the last 25 years as core criteria for people to make decisions on what role they want to jump into.
I think when we talk about cloud being disruptive in the job market and requiring new skills, it's worth it to talk about the very low attrition and sort of the 10 careers in one, if you will, that you can have at Dell. Jeremy, I want to bring you into the conversation because you definitely personify a skill set that existed in one sort of thought leadership bank and now is being applied to another. Can you help the folks who are in this webinar understand what some of those critical skills are? And then I'll open it up to the rest of the panel as well.
Sure, and I think if you build on what Deepak was talking about around some of the aspects of being a part of, a given organization, and I think if you kind of apply that to cloud in particular, I think one of the more powerful things about cloud is that you begin to kind of get out of the infrastructure layer and begin to understand more of the outcomes and objectives, whether it's from a business unit point of view or a usage case point of view. I mean, historically, if you're a data center admin, you may know that the lights on the server are green, but you have no idea of what's actually being run on top of that infrastructure in many cases. And so I think when you look at some of the opportunities that cloud provides from a skill set perspective and really kind of elevate some of the technical capabilities and how those can be applied to achieve specific outcomes, whether that's in a vertical market, whether that's in a use case, whether that's in how redefining a business and how it operates through digital transformation, that outcome-based focus with a kind of a core I guess, foundation of technical expertise can be applied in multiple areas, including philanthropy inside of a major corporation, in the sense of its outcome-focused technology is more relevant than ever. And I think we see that same exact aspects in multiple vertical markets as every company becomes a technology at some level. And as a result, the skills that you get within the cloud space are very transferable into other whether it's completely different career paths or other vertical markets, because of that outcome-based focus that's really infused with technology.
Would anyone else care to weigh in?
What he said.
I love it. We have a question coming in now in our Q&A option. The question is, the cloud has shaped human behavior, but how are we shaping the cloud? Who would like to take the lead on that one?
I can take that. One of the things that I somewhat jokingly say at work is that at the end of the day, cloud exists in the cloud only in PowerPoint slides. At the end of the day, it is real people building real technology, building real processes, building real businesses, and joining hands and working together to make what was unimaginable just a few years ago possible. So that's that's really what this cloud as an operating model is. One of the key transformations that has happened in the industry over the last 10 years is that we've moved from looking at cloud as a destination, some set of servers sitting in somebody's data center, to cloud as an operating model, and defining newer ways of doing commerce and building faster ways of building application and automation and delivering capabilities as services or network. All of those core characteristics of this cloud operating model, bringing those characteristics to wherever customers' workloads are. So if you look at where the entire concept of cloud started with Amazon and AWS more than 15 years ago to where we are, we've come a long ways from just looking at cloud as a set of servers and infrastructure delivered as kind of infrastructure as a service to a really fundamentally different operating model for companies to run their IT and they run their applications and build their businesses on. And all that is possible primarily because of human ingenuity, primarily because of all the work that different companies from Microsoft to VMware to Amazon to Google to Dell having done in thinking about it differently. And I do believe that the next decade is going to, again, go through at least a couple of different reincarnations of the definition of cloud itself as an operating model that exists on the edge, that exists in hyperscaler data centers, that exists in customer data centers, and the phenomenal opportunities all of us, people who are building cloud, driving cloud thinking, have in front of us is to influence as leaders and as technologists and as business people, influence that next incarnation of what cloud as an operating model shapes up to be.
Absolutely. I would add to that I think that what's important that we see from cloud vendors and from enterprises who are adopting various iterations of cloud is that, and I really hate to use this word because I'm positive it's going to end up on the most hated corporate buzzwords list of 2020, right after COVID-19, but democratization. Okay, and so I think cloud is becoming as ubiquitous as the internet. Cloud is everything. Cloud is everywhere. It powers everything we do. And I think we need to think of it as something that is less always requiring super high level IT expertise to something that throughout an organization, everybody can use, everybody can touch, everybody plays a role. And again, that's that democratization and the taking of this thing that, sounds very complex. I mean, we all use cloud technology all day, every day. And we may not know, we're using it at the edge or we're touching a data center or whatever, and it doesn't matter. And I think that is also, I think it's really important from a vendor standpoint that, we look at how our products and services serve not only enterprises, but the small to mid-sized sector and how that impacts people and how that can change your career within an organization as you learn, what to do with cloud technologies that are at your fingertips. And I think to me, that's really exciting from a skill set, from a career standpoint and that kind of thing. So I think that the conversation needs to lead in that way in some respects as we just talk about what this means for, certainly for careers.
As we go through the process of expanding our workforce and diversifying our workforce, I want to talk to Jeremy a little bit about the ways that Dell sort of manages its do more, say less. In other words, come up with a plan and let's make it happen. And I'm speaking specifically, Jeremy, about the company's 2030 goals. Can you walk me through a little bit of that?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a few things that are really key as we talk about, cloud being an engine for innovation. One of the other engines of innovation is diversity. And then what we see consistently is that the more diverse a company is, whether that's from a gender, socioeconomic, race perspective, they tend to be in the higher quartile of profitable companies. So the more diverse that a company is, they tend to have more innovation, more profitability. And so, we think one really key aspect of how do we unlock not only the innovation potential within cloud, but really the innovation potential within any company is how do we increase the diversity of that company? And so one of the, aspects as we launched our 2030 goals back in November was really around how do we develop a culture of inclusivity. And so we've established goals to, get our workforce to 50% female globally, including at, all levels of leadership. as well as goals on how do we ensure that we as a company, as we continue to grow and the use of technology continues to expand, that we're doing so from an environmental responsibility perspective and that we can maintain sustainability. And then when you look at technologies like cloud that enable this immense scale, we have goals around how do we leverage technologies like cloud and others to provide enduring value for 1 billion people in the areas of education, health, and economic opportunity, as well as provide our customers the control to help manage their data from an ethics and privacy point of view. And so without technologies like cloud and without a diverse workforce, we wouldn't be able to achieve or even think about many of these kind of very audacious 2030 goals, that we've set for ourselves as a company. And we think that, driving that level of technical innovation is unlocked by us driving that level of social innovation as well.
We have an interesting question coming in the chat from someone in the education sector. And I do see folks still continuing to join. So just to let everyone know, we are recording this and we'll provide you in a future email with a link, so you can check out this recording if you missed the beginning. The question coming in from the attendee is, what is changing or emerging that should inform the strategy for students who are interested in cloud tech?
Yeah, I can just say maybe a couple things, and if there's others, I think, again, the first piece of what's so powerful about cloud is the ability, as Deepak said, it can be applied and shaped into different use cases. And some of those, are going to be, kind of more broad-based, and some of those are going to be very specific. And so, I think that when you look at it from an education point of view, there's a few things that are evolving, which is, one is putting the technology into context of trying to solve a specific problem or issue. And so I think the more that we can understand what outcomes that is trying to be achieved and apply technology to that, I think from an education point of view, we're seeing that shift a lot, where it's not just technology for technology's sake, it's really applied technology. I think the other big thing is that, we need to recognize that there's different career paths, where, the traditional, 4-year degree is one career path within a university, but there's others that we need to open up from, as you mentioned earlier, Steph, on, re-entry to the workforce, or we see things around kind of micro-credentials and certifications where individuals can get certified in one specific area of cloud or other technology areas, and then quickly be able to get jobs and then develop this kind of lifelong learning aspect where they can then grow from there. And I think that's a lot. I think, that some of the innovation that's been driven within cloud as an operating model and as an innovation model, I think in some ways have been applied to the education sector, where you can learn, develop a competency, achieve an outcome, a job perhaps, and then learn, achieve, and then develop from there. Simply, I think that's what's kind of changing the education sector as it relates to cloud in particular.
Just one thing I'll add to that, and Jeremy, you're spot on, is cloud is probably the most transformative force in terms of making access to technology simpler, cheaper, and instant, especially for students. You can think about, and another thing that has happened is kind of, I know I'm going to overuse an already overused term. It has democratized engineering. It has democratized STEM. There's this concept of citizen developers that a lot of us kind of cloud technology developers have been investing in, where software development, which once was an extremely privileged and complex and difficult thing, it doesn't have to be like that. It needs to become exponentially easier to build new applications, new systems, new services. And cloud is probably the most influential and the most transformative force, because it makes access to technology to citizen developers incredibly easier. And then it makes building new applications extremely, extremely seamless and simple.
Yeah, and I would add to that and say that when you have a lot of people in the workforce or wanting to get into the workforce didn't go down the path of, learning to code or learning, really deep IT concepts. And I have been so lucky to be able to do interviews with young people in the workforce. And not, by the way, not even just young people, but with people in the workforce who never thought they would ever touch anything having to do with software development, who are involved in, for instance, automation initiatives within, by the way, all enabled by cloud, but who all of a sudden are, able to build bots and automation sequences and things that are truly changing the way work is happening within an organization in ways that you can actually look at, okay, increased productivity. We are able to put our human counterpart, our human workforce, to doing things that they're really excited about and that they love, but they're able to develop technology. And when you talk to those people and when you see their faces, and those citizen developers, generally speaking, go on within organizations to teach other people within the organization how to do that. And it's just the most exciting thing to see. So very much it is transformational in terms of all of the things that cloud is able to do within an organization, small ones, medium-sized ones, large ones, and it's just changing everything. So I think that's really exciting. And I think it's as exciting for companies as it is for current employees, it is for students thinking about going down this path. So I think it's really awesome.
And one of the additional things about students is, especially the kind of current generation, new age students, is their proficiency and affinity to modern intelligent technologies like ML and AI and IoT and so on and so forth. One of the most exciting things that I learned recently as part of kind of some of our executive conversations inside Dell is that we have more than 600 AI-based initiatives and projects going on in the company. I mean, who would have thought that there's 600 plus AI projects going on inside Dell? Everything from completely modernizing our supply chain with using AI to the next storage platform, use of AI in the next storage platform. So that's another thing that I feel like as especially as we as a company go to colleges and position Dell Technologies as a destination for some of the more modern cloud native engineers to think about. It's a great example that comes to mind in terms of how Dell Technologies itself is transforming itself in terms of use of modern cloud native technologies.
We have a number of questions now populating the chat, and we are getting to a lot of them. There are still some questions to come that we'll address folks a little bit earlier on. I do, and to your point, Deepak, when you talk about even just some of the ways that Dell has used its cloud-based analytics to offer preventive healthcare in India, I mean, the amount of personal benefit that can be achieved on a worldwide scale using cloud is really what we're talking about here. And that dovetails into a question coming in from Al. And I like this because it's something I think everyone can answer. At this point, isn't cloud really morphing into just a new way of saying the internet in a practical sense? So how long do you think it will take before we stop treating cloud like it's something new? And I think it's safe to say, Alice, speaking maybe from a societal standpoint, those of you who are in the weeds on it, it already is that way, but maybe speaking from an outside perspective.
I can take that, and then Shelly, Jeremy, you guys can jump in. I don't think it's new anymore. It's a way of doing business. It's an operating model that we are finding ourselves more and more comfortable with. Now, a key thing that has changed though is that previously, when you thought about a cloud provider, you thought about a Microsoft or an Amazon or an Alibaba, for example. But the key transformation that is happening is that cloud is an operating model that has specific characteristics around how you purchase, how you build your software applications and your services, how you simplify your IT, those types of characteristics, how you deliver your assets or network. Those don't need to belong just in some Amazon data center or a Microsoft data center. They can belong everywhere as a default way of building and conducting business. So cloud as this operating model is becoming a more prevalent part of new normal than what it was, say, 8-9 years ago.
Anyone else care to weigh in?
I'm just going to say hi, Al. It's great to be hearing from you on this webinar and messaging you on Messenger. So thanks for showing up. And, you know, I think I mentioned this earlier, you know, cloud is becoming like the internet. We all touch it all day, every day, whether we realize it or not. And it is powering every aspect of business. And so I think your point is really well taken. It's, you know, it really is our new normal.
And another, just one layer I'll add to that, Steph, if I may.
Please.
We often inside Dell Technology, we often talk about the fact that, you know, 80s was the decade of the PC, 90s was the decade of the internet, 2000s was the decade of the smartphone, 2010s was the decade of the cloud. And those were the decades where those things, as you exactly called out, they just became part of our life. There was nothing new. I mean, who doesn't have a smartphone? Of course, there are people, but normally smartphone's a normal thing. Internet's a normal day-to-day thing. Similarly, as we're entering this next decade, cloud has become this new normal.
And I will add one other thing here. We have a bunch of research studies in motion right now. We have a global survey that we're doing that we haven't published yet. We surveyed over 375 enterprises. 30% of those respondents told us that they're strongly rethinking their entire business models. Yep. And on top of that, 78% of our respondents said that they're accelerating plans to centralize computing in the cloud to better create a single system of record and with best-in-breed data security. So I think that shows you, you know, really where the business community focus is. It's all in on cloud all the way.
I want to talk about the fact that more than ever, all the people behind the cloud, and we've been talking about this, developer, IT, admin, sales, reps, everyone who is interested and has the opportunity to cherry pick where they want to work, wants to work for a place where they feel good about showing up. Deepak has touched on this earlier, but I think we have an opportunity to maybe deep dive more with Jeremy into some of the many ways that Dell is working to provide this sort of workforce experience to the people who work for the company.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing is, and I guess the payoff, you know, Deepak's, you know, he kind of went up through 2020, you know, essentially as the, you know, the cloud decade. And I think what we really see is a few things that we look at, you know, the next decade of, you know, I think from a technology point of view, it really becomes the data decade, where you're able to then kind of take data and then apply it to a number of really interesting, you know, areas to kind of help change, you know, transform the what into so what, and really kind of help, you know, develop knowledge and kind of build new capabilities. And so, you know, I think one thing that we see from a, you know, kind of a workforce perspective is, you know, I think they want to be a part of, being a part of that transformation of where we're able to kind of move, you know, from, you know, this kind of this enablement piece where we can now use data to then kind of better inform how education is delivered and health is delivered. And in many ways, workforces are moving from a knowledge-based to more of a purpose-based desire when they work for a company. And so it used to be you'd gain knowledge, which would increase value to yourself, which then give you more job opportunities. And while that's certainly true to a degree, we see individuals wanting more of a purpose-based, you know, environment where, you know, they are able to kind of work on meaningful, you know, to learn and grow. And certainly cloud in the data decade provides that opportunity. They want meaningful relationships to be able to, you know, kind of grow their own networks. And I think as we see kind of more remote workforce and those type of things that are enabled, that can challenge, but also enable new paths to connectivity. And then they want to work on something that where in the corporation where the role has more intrinsic value to them than just a paycheck and then just a job. And so, you know, we really look at how do we, in all that we do, you know, really look at drive more kind of purpose, you know, in fulfillment into, you know, those roles. And I think that, you know, being able to kind of blend our social strategy, some of which we talked about earlier, what we're trying to achieve from a social point of view with our business strategy and our technology strategies, is how we're trying to create that environment where people in a way can blend their vocation with their purpose or with a greater sense of purpose.
I think when you look at some of the things that we've already talked about in terms of the workforce and people coming on board to Dell, I did find it interesting that this particular class of interns that you have is the most diverse yet. It's in excess of 900 people, and it is beginning to showcase the very things that you are trying to address in your 2030 goals. What are some of the other ways, Jeremy, that the company is aggressively going after this workforce?
Sure. So I think there's a few things. I think one is we need to increase the access. And so when we say access, there's some, aspects of just, we have to bridge, the digital divide, and a lot of what we've been talking about and the benefits of cloud and the benefits of democratization, in some cases aren't accessible to all. And so I think one aspect of it is how do we begin to address access so that more individuals can, lend their own unique areas of innovation and participate in this whole digital economy. And so a lot of what we invest in is, how do we increase access at a kind of a foundational level? But then ultimately, we want to open up the pipeline of talent coming into the industry holistically and obviously of Dell. And so, that means that, one of the things that, the pandemic has shown, and a lot of what Shelly was talking about earlier and kind of relates back to the education piece, is that location and where you live is becoming less of an issue on your ability to participate in, whether it's a role at Dell or in other areas. And so having that kind of broader pipeline from a geographic perspective is key. And then once we get individuals into companies like Dell, we want to make sure that we're addressing unconscious bias that is in the system, whether that's from a talent acquisition point of view or a career development perspective. And so we have unconscious bias training that all team members within Dell go through to really kind of help identify, a lot of those issues that may prevent us from enabling that diversity that can continue throughout the company and through the leadership levels. And again, I think as we enable that, what we find is that it's a business imperative more than we're just doing it, because we're good people. It's really about how do we kind of drive this innovation and unlock this innovation, that we have. And so that's some of the ways that we're looking to and kind of enable kind of this broader, kind of diversity within our workforce and really kind of achieve some of these social goals that we're looking to achieve.
Anyone else care to weigh in?
I think the cool thing about this, speaking from an outsider point of view, is that we've been hearing talk about diversity and inclusion for a very long time. I'm a woman in tech. Trust me, I've been hearing it for a very long time and rarely experiencing it. For example, I went to register for a webinar today on a topic that I'm really interested in and I have great expertise in. And when I saw that the entire panel was a bunch of middle-aged white guys, I said, you know what? This company doesn't speak my language. And I think that, so here I am on a panel that is a diverse panel. And I think that what companies are realizing that we can't talk the talk without walking the walk. And I think that we are seeing, especially in these times of great social unrest and a global health crisis, I think people really want to be able to feel a connection and they want to trust a company that they're thinking about working for, and they're going to dig deep and they're going to look and see what diversity and inclusion really looks like and what opportunities are there for me to develop new skills. And I'm a big dreamer and I want to change things and I want to make the world a better place. And this company may hit all the marks on, whatever materials they're distributing at, a college recruiting effort or at a higher level recruiting effort, but people are really smart. And they want to look for more. They expect more. And I came up in my career at a time when it was you just did whatever had to be done, and nobody cared about your own personal advancement or anything else. And we are looking at a generation in the workforce that isn't interested in that, and that's not enough for them. And so I think that this is really where brands and where companies like Dell have a great opportunity to be amazing companies and to be innovative and to be invested in their people and in the communities they serve and in the customers they serve. And I think those are the sort of things that people see and they keep in their hearts and they want to be a part of. And I think that's really, really important.
I think, Shelly, just to sort of, go ahead, Deepak.
No, just one last thing on that. We are inside Dell Technologies. We are all very excited about the 2030 moonshot goals that Jeremy talked about. They range on issues from from ethics to sustainability to life transformation. But the one I'm very excited about is our goal to have 50% women workforce and 40% women leadership workforce in the company. It's a phenomenal. The good thing is it's not just lip service. I mean, we are, every week I review my recruitment pipeline, and we have many open positions. Every week I review my recruitment pipeline, reviewing the recruitment pipeline from how many diversity candidates, how many women candidates we are talking to is a key part of the conversation. And then in addition to evolving our recruitment practices to bring in more women and more women leaders in the company, other aspect that Jeremy talked about in terms of addressing any potential unconscious bias, creating growth opportunities in the company, creating a culture where diverse perspectives and opinions and work styles and everything is not only respected but celebrated. All of those things are in full force inside the company, and I that's one of the reasons why I'm very excited about what the next 10 years will bring for us in terms of leading the industry.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
Given the awards and accolades the company has received, Ethisphere and other organizations sort of highlighting the good work that Dell does, I want to offer a tangible example of this. As Deepak was saying, it's not just lip service. When we were talking about the program to hire people with autism, what I saw when I was researching that was an entirely redone interview process, because the stopping point for people to enter the workforce was during the interview process. The face-to-face communication that they acknowledged in their own employment history was what prevented them from getting a foot in the door. And Dell reinvented what that process looked like to address the things Jeremy's talking about with that unconscious bias, to create an interview process that let their technical skills shine. And as a result, you have a workforce that is engaged. They're able to buy a home. They're able to take care of their children. It's remarkable. And I just wanted to offer that to this group as one tangible example among hundreds of the ways that Dell is trying to get in front of this. I want to move on to the big things. And I think, Shelly, I will start with you. The environment and privacy. Privacy is something you have probably kept your thumbprint on in the industry, particularly as it pertains to IoT and cloud. But it's worth addressing because it's already come up several times in the chat. What is it going to take to give consumer confidence that privacy concerns are addressed in this space?
Well, I think that we talk a lot about privacy. We do a lot of research on the topic of data privacy, data protection, and it truly is at the very top of actually not just consumers' minds, but also enterprise leaders and IT leaders, and everybody's concerned about data protection, security, privacy. And so I think that what's super important is consumers feel. We did some research looking at 2030. Actually, it was called Customer Experience 2030, and looking at we surveyed 4,000 brands and 4,000 consumers, and those consumers indicated that they very much feel that privacy is an issue, that brands don't respect their privacy, that it feels like a runaway train, that they don't know what to do, they don't know how to protect themselves. And so I think that is a message that brands, especially technology brands, can take to heart, because having security, data security, privacy protection be at the core of every single thing that you do, every product that you develop, every single part, whether it's a laptop that you're selling or cloud services that you're selling or whatever, just knowing that, end-to-end data, end-to-end point data protection is so top of mind, and that our team takes your privacy to heart. We go to sleep at night worrying about that. We wake up in the morning worrying about that. And I think that that's what consumers want to know and feel, because today is really a time when most of us don't know who to trust or what to trust. And so, when you can hear that messaging, or when you see people who are part of a team who are talking about, there's nothing that we don't do that doesn't have security front and center. I think that messaging from a corporate standpoint and beyond just messaging, actually action and building that into everything that you do is critically important. And that's not going to change. That consumers' interest in privacy, businesses' interest in privacy is only going to remain at the very top of the list of needs and concerns.
Yeah, and I think there's a part of that which is, just kind of building on Shelly's comments, which is, how do we, enable transparency and control? And so, we talked a lot about a lot of the other, goals that we've established for ourselves as a company, but what we found in general is, customers, businesses, want to know, what data do we have as Dell on them there, so that's the transparency part, and then provide them the ability to have control over either editing that data, if they so choose, delete that data. And so I think that, one of the things beyond just kind of the table stakes, components that Shelly talked about is just how do we continue as an industry, and clearly as, from Dell Technologies' point of view, put customers in control of their data and be fully transparent about what data we have on them. Those are, I think, the two key aspects that we see, that are critical today and that will continue to be critical over the next 10 years.
Deepak?
Fully aligned with everything that Steph and Jeremy said. The only thing I'll add is when we think about cloud as an operating model, trust is a fundamental pivot for cloud. And over the last 10 years, we've gone through various kind of evolutions in terms of how customers look at cloud from a trust point of view. And I usually define trust as security, privacy, compliance, and transparency as kind of the four core pillars of trust. And 10 years ago, customers were hesitant to embrace the cloud operating model for concerns around trust. And now customers actually inherently believe that cloud as an operating model is more trustworthy than probably the previous kind of more legacy operating models for building their businesses. We got a long ways to go. And as more data residency, data jurisdiction, data sovereignty questions kind of arise, more security challenges arise, this is a kind of an ongoing conversation about how cloud as an operating model can continue to be more trustworthy. Privacy continues to be a key pillar of that conversation and a key factor that will define over long haul how cloud becomes a more trustworthy operating model.
I have one more question for the group and then one more question coming in from the chat. And Jeremy, let me ask you, talk a little bit about the company's environmental responsibility and how it pertains to your 2030 goals, because something for those of us who are here on the West Coast and really everywhere are keenly interested in helping address climate change, as well as the recycling of electronics, which is the fastest growing segment of that sort of consumer waste product, and a very challenging one at that. So Jeremy, talk a little bit about the company's initiatives to get ahead of that curve.
Yeah, so as we see technology adoption, be increasingly prevalent, and for a lot of good reasons and a lot of great things that technology can help achieve, the one thing that we recognize that we need to address is that electronic waste is the fastest commercial and consumer waste stream, in the world. Only about 18% or so of electronics get recycled today. And so, we as a technology leader, feel like we need to, address that head on. And so we've been investing for a number of years in this concept of circular economy, which is the ability for us to basically take back product, in some cases from other industries. And so, for example, we use carbon fiber waste from the airline industry in some of our notebooks. But ultimately what we want to enable is this ecosystem where we can take back products, put them into new products, and not have to consistently, basically essentially pull virgin material, out of the ground or from wherever to build new things. And so as a company, we've not only been investing for a number of years in this whole concept of circular economy, but as it relates to 2030, is that we've committed that, by 2030, that for every product that we sell, we will take back an equivalent product. So essentially look at it as a one-to-one program to kind of help address that electronic waste stream. And then 50% of our products and 100% of our packaging will be developed from renewable or recyclable content. And we think this is one key aspect of how do we begin to kind of adjust, what we've seen of technology's impact on the environment, And that's one of the ways that, we're really setting goals for ourselves and really helping to establish this supply chain of circular economy for the industry to help address some of the environmental concerns that technology can unfortunately develop or contribute to.
In your very own sort of talk papers on your website, the future is circular, as I have seen your organizers say, David Lear in particular coming to mind. My final question to you before we conclude is one that actually came in from our chat, and each of you can take a crack at this. Jeremy, we'll start with you. I want you to put on some very specific goggles and only try to forecast, crystal ball this 5 years in advance. What does this industry look like in 5 years?
Yeah, I think it's always interesting, these questions, because I think you can look at, what's it gonna be and what's new. I think there's gonna be a lot of aspects that actually don't change. I mean, as far as some of the things that Deepak highlighted at the very beginning, which is how do we further increase accessibility? How do we further enable technology to basically get further, as I guess Shelly's new buzzword, democratize in different use cases down to lower levels? And we talked about before about, there is a digital divide not only in the United States, but globally, so some of that is being limited. So I think technologies like cloud will enable us to further enable, kind of that access more broadly, which then opens up these broader opportunities for, as you pointed out, Steph, education, health, economic opportunity that are so critical in kind of the digital economy or the data era as we've seen. And so that's what I think over the next 5 years that we'll continue to see is this further democratization and further access that will then help bring more people into the digital economy and address some of the root socioeconomic disparity issues that we see within the US and globally.
Deepak, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a great question to end the conversation as well. I think the crystal ball, as you call it out, Steph, if I look at the crystal ball, especially from the lens of cloud technology, I see three things happening over the next 5 years. We inside Dell Technologies have called the next decade the next data decade, and we believe that both the explosion of data across IoT and everything, as well as the concerns about all the things that we talked about from data, trust, privacy, jurisdiction, will push the rate of innovation around data technologies to new heights and new levels. And that includes everything from innovations in IoT to data management technologies and so on and so forth. So data will be a defining factor over the next 5 years in terms of where we go. The second thing that I see happening is really the power of cloud fueling innovation in more and more diverse industry verticals that have not benefited from the power of technology and the technology democratization. Education comes to mind, more kind of retail type industry verticals come to mind, but cloud will fuel industry specific innovations and disruptions more over the next 5 years than it has. And the third thing that I see will happen is innovating and building new services, building new applications, building new platforms will become exponentially easier because of the work that everybody's doing around citizen developers over the next 5 years than it is today.
And Shelly.
That perfectly tees up my thoughts, and you didn't even know this. I think that what we will see is, first of all, I will say, I think it's very hard to look into a crystal ball and predict 5 years in advance, especially, I mean, we're learning that today, right? If we would have asked people these questions in October of 2019, we would have gotten completely different answers. So I think that what we have seen is that business resiliency and business continuity planning and understanding how to power a remote workforce, understanding that a remote workforce actually works pretty well when you have everything together. And by the way, most of us don't right now yet have everything together, but we're getting there. I think this is where we'll see the new iteration of cloud moving forward is where we see business and personal collide. And, you know, all of our lives right now are a combination of business and personal, and sort of knowing how that works and fueling that within the workplace. And again, I'm going to go back to my, you know, vendors will really start understanding that making apps and all things within the cloud, easy to use, able to scale up, scale down. I can buy what I need. I don't have to lock into this huge purchase, all that sort of thing. I think we're going to see a ton of that as well. So I think we have much change ahead as it relates to cloud, but I think that cloud still continues to power everything.
This has been absolutely a fantastic and fascinating panel. I do want to let everybody know who's in there. You can see the link right now as it populates in the chat. If you are interested in learning more about the opportunities at Dell and the diversity of opportunities at Dell, just check out jobs.dell.com/cloud. Again, that link is in the chat. And to our panel, I'm so appreciative of your time and your insights. This has been part of the Dell Technologies webinar for GeekWire Studios. We have recorded this and we will provide you with a link in a future email if you choose to share with your colleagues. Everyone, I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for being a part of this.